Before we leave the functions world, I wanted to do one that returned a value, and then talk a bit about member functions of classes. Okay, so if we're gonna do one that returns a value, so not a void function, but one that returns a value, why don't we just do the average one? I know it's we kind of did it already. So it returns a value, and we decided that was returning a double because it could be a decimal, right? Average 3Tests, okay. And what was it? Int T1, int T2, judgment day, int T3, right? Okay, average 3Tests, and it'll return. And we got to make one of these a double, right? So we got to some way either cast it to a double or not. So I could cast T1 to a double. Double T1 plus T2, judgment day, plus T3. What was T3? Rise of the Machines? Rise of the Machines? I don't know. I'll look it up. I'll look it up at the end of this video. All right, divided by 3. So that's how we can average it, and it's going to average the 3 tests and return that value. Now remember that what's going to happen here is this thing is going to turn into a double. So we can do with this thing anything we can do with a double, all right? What does that mean? Well, I could be like double the answer equals average 3 tests 94, 93, and 96. Okay, those are the tests you guys are gonna get. All right, where I'm subconsciously giving you the cheat to make the. Well, I mean, I guess if I was doing that, why wouldn't I just make them all 100? Because it's got to be realistic. No one gets all the hundreds unless they're a robot. Even I don't. As the test creator, I always every so often it'll be like, oh, there was a mistake on this test. I didn't do well on this test either, guys. People aren't thrilled, by the way, when that happens. Answer, and we could say 3 test average, right, is the answer. Something like that, right? Yeah, okay. So 3 test average, and then we could do that, right? So we're giving it 3 numbers, and then it's going to evaluate to a double. And so that's like this whole thing evaluating to a double. That's literally like this being replaced by a double, right? And then we're able to print that out. Okay. And what's nice about this is we can do it again and again with 3 different tests, and it'll always do the average. And so we don't have to worry about doing this ugly thing every single time. We could just say, oh, right, this is going to be the average of these 3 numbers every time. And so we can just, so this is much more human readable than this. I think we can all agree, right? If you see this, you're like, what does that do? But if you put it in a function called average3Tests, well, now it's clear what's going on, right? These 3 tests are being averaged and being put in there. Okay, so let's see what the 3 test average is. It's 94.33333, right? Good thing we it brought back a double, right? If we didn't do this, we would get back an int. Okay. All right, I'm in parentheses hell right now, and that's gonna be our int. Now it returns a double, so it took out the decimal, and then it returned. It was like, okay, well, I can cast this. So it actually implicitly casted that int to a double, but that's no good because 94.0, it's already dropped the thing. So we could put 3.0 there. And we're back. Notice, remember we talked about these things not being saved exactly, these doubles not being saved exactly, right? Obviously, that's not correct, but that's okay because you're not guaranteed for doubles to be saved exactly. Okay. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. There's a problem for you, and I'll see you in the next video. So that's functions, okay? Those are just functions. Oh, there was one last thing I wanted to talk about. So in our so two things actually. So now you kind of know why ellipse takes in 4 values, right? Because those are the parameters ellipse starts with, right? And it's like the first line of the code sets the first parameter that ellipse has to this value, which is the center x, center y, width, and height, right? So that order matters, right? And just like here, it's like T1 is being set to 94 for this run of the function, T2 is being set to 93, and T3 is being set to 95, okay? So that's one thing. The other thing is when we have methods, so member functions in our ball class, right? We don't pass in parameters, but they still act on data, right? Those private variables are always available to any function within the class. So a lot of times in member functions, we don't pass in a value because we're acting on the data in the class already. And that data is, I think it was center x, center y, velocity x, velocity y, ellipse width, and ellipse height. Now we could have functions that act on that data. That take in parameters and act on that data. Setters do that, right? So setters will take in a value and then set our private variables to that value that's passed in. Okay, so that's an example of something that takes in a parameter. Equals, which we'll talk about again, we'll take in another ball and see if this instance is equal to that instance. Maybe not a good example right now, but hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully functions make a little more sense to you. If not, come see me. We'll talk about them. They're pretty straightforward. Again, mini programs, right? Mini programs. We're just jumping down here and then we're jumping back up. See you next video.